Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. My name is Timothy Wenger and I'm from The Man Effect. And with me today, I have Boysen Hodgson. Can you correct that for me? Because I just
Boysen Hodgson, like Boysen Hodgson.
And you are the Communications and Marketing Director for the USA Mankind Project.
That's right.
And for everyone who's tuning in who doesn't have a general concept of what the Mankind Project is, I know we're going to jump into it more here, but could you just kind of give a short synopsis of that?
Sure. So the what of the Mankind Project is we're a global brotherhood of nonprofit organizations, non-NGOs in other parts of the world. And we do three things. We run training programs for guys on a variety of things. Our flagship program is called the New Warrior Training Adventure, which is a weekend intensive. We host a network of peer facilitated support groups for men, so personal development groups for men that are men mentoring men through all the ages and stages and issues and triumphs of life. And we support and encourage men in living missions of service out in the world. So taking their deepest gifts, their deepest talents, and manifesting those into the world in the form of service.
And how long has the Mankind Project been around?
The Mankind Project got started in the USA in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the early 80s, 1984. 85 was the first year that we ran our flagship training. At that time was called the Wild Man Weekend. We pretty quickly through the 80s and 90s spread around the world based on men's passion and volunteerism and leadership and travel and all of that. So now we're in 12 regions around the world. Since 1985, about close to 65,000 men have gone through our flagship training.
Wow.
And about 10,000 men every week are sitting in a Mankind Project men's group somewhere around the world. So right now there's a Mankind Project men's group meeting.
That's crazy. That makes me think, I didn't know you guys started that early. I'm like, you guys outlasted Promise Keepers. Like, you guys stayed alive.
It's a very different model, but yeah, I mean, Promise Keepers is another kind of part of the men's movement. So the Mankind Project has been considered, we kind of got our start, have our feet planted in the soil of the mythopoetic men's movement, if you've never heard of that, which
I haven't.
So Robert Bly and Michael Meade and James Hillman and Robert Moore and they all had in the late 70s and 80s and into the early 90s, there was this idea of mythopoetics. And mythopoetics I love. So mythos, the story, poesis is the generation of reality. Okay. So the stories that generate reality. So there was a movement of a lot of different men and storytellers and poets and guys getting together, some of which are still going. The Minnesota Men's Conference has now been running for like 38 years consecutively, where guys get together and they tell stories. So they bring back myths and they analyze myths. And, of course, the analysis changes and how we see things change. But as human beings, we love to see ourselves in stories.
Yeah.
So MKP kind of grew up in this fertile soil of the mythopoetics. And over the last 35 years, we've branched out. We've integrated a lot of other kind of personal development modalities and technologies. And as more and more different demographics of men and different backgrounds of men get involved, they bring their own flavors and their own thing to the work that we do. So that now I like to see the Mankind Project as kind of really trying to bridge the supposed gaps between different aspects of what this masculinity thing is all about in our world, giving men a place to really dive in.
Yeah. That's interesting. And how long have you been with the Mankind Project personally?
I have, so I did the flagship training. I did the New Warrior Training Adventure in 2004, so
Okay.
14 years ago.
Okay.
And I pretty quickly started volunteering for the organization. Within a year or so after that, got involved in a men's group.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in the role that I'm in now for a little over 8 years. So I volunteered for a bunch of years, just offering
Yeah.
marketing and copywriting and the kind of stuff that I do.
Wow. Dang.
Yeah, I've been around a while, and I was not the first in my family. Like I'm from this like huge New Warrior. So the
Mm.
New Warrior Training Adventure, a man
Yeah.
who participates, a man who survives that weekend,
Uh-huh.
is called a New Warrior, and
Yeah.
I'm from a huge New Warrior clan. So I have 5 brothers out of 6
Wow.
who have all gone through the New Warrior Training Adventure. My dad went through it. My
Mm.
stepdad went through it. I've
Mm.
got cousins who went through it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like one of the last. I still have one brother who's holdout. We'll get there. But I was the last of all those guys. I knew about it for years and years, and I kept saying,
Uh-huh.
no way, I don't want any part of that, da, 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 da. And then
Yeah.
eventually shifted.
What kind of impact have you seen it have on your family's communication, like between men?
That's a really cool thing. So many of my brothers are not actively involved now, or kind of very tangentially involved. A
Mm-hmm.
couple of my brothers are still going to men's groups. One of them has been consistently in a men's group since he did the training
Okay.
15 years ago or more. And what I notice is we're still a family. We
Of
still
course.
have our dysfunction. We still have, our the Hodgson communication, which is sometimes nil, sometimes no communication at all. We're still terrible about planning family get-togethers. Like we got all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are together, there's a dropping in with
Mm.
each other. There's a presence with each other that I think is different, certainly since before a lot of
Mm.
us did this kind of work, and it gives us a frame of reference. Whether we're actively involved or not, we have this frame of reference for relating as men
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that is very different than when we were young.
Yeah.
And I still see that through line following through. And what I think is really cool is even a couple of my brothers who have been really out, just not involved, not doing the work for a long time. Now they're entering into different stages of their lives,
Mm-hmm.
entering into a new phase of their lives, and are like, you know what? Hey, Boysen, can you send me a link for a men's group? Because I want to go sit in a men's group again.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it becomes this, like, there's a resource out there that
Yeah.
they know about,
Exactly.
that they can go tap into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for everyone who's watching, I haven't gone through the Mankind Project myself yet. I've gone through other courses that may have pulled from them, and those courses have had a tremendous impact on my own walk, and that's part of the reason why I've been so intrigued to interview Boysen. So I'm curious though, like for people who have no grasp for the Mankind Project or similar programs, how do you overcome the barriers of, oh, it's a cult, or, oh, that's just a bunch of shit, like that's a bunch of balooey psychological self-help bullshit, like what are some of the things and skills you've learned to overcome those type of barriers?
So that's what I said for years, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Just by
Yeah.
the way, that's what I said for years before getting involved in the organization. And the word cult is just this incredibly amorphous word, oft used, oft shaped into whatever frame that somebody wants to stuff it into. So I live in Massachusetts. So you want a cult? Red Sox fans. Red Sox fans are a cult. Bradyites,
Mm-hmm.
Tom Bradyites, there's a cult for you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So is that true? No, it's not true. But from the outside, wow, they have a charismatic leader. They have something that they follow, something they're diehard to, something that they will make themselves look fools for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no. So what the Mankind Project is about is a values-driven organization. So, integrity, authenticity, accountability, respect, multicultural awareness, generosity. We're a values-driven organization that is about men's personal development. And some aspects of that personal development, like if you're a guy who's been stuck behind a mask and showing the world one aspect of yourself for 15 years, and then go through a process where you become willing to finally like set that mask off, take that mask off and get real. The people around you are going to be like, what the fuck happened to you? Like, what is this? And that is the kind of awakening experience that a lot of guys have when they go through the New Warrior Training Adventure, when they have this kind of, get this kind of process. But, what MKP doesn't have is, I'm not going to tell you how to be as a man. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you who to follow. I'm not going to give you a bullshit story that some, origination story, Scientology alien story. Like, I'm not going to do any of that because we don't have that. Like, dude, what do you want in your life? What are you willing to risk to go and make it real? And are you willing to feel everything that comes up? Because, I mean, if the Mankind Project is about getting men, the longest journey of a man's life will be the 18 inches from his head to his heart. And that's the journey that we take guys on. And that can freak people out. So, for folks who kind of say the Mankind Project is a cult or whatever, it's like, well, you probably haven't actually been in a real cult or experienced that. And, other accusations we get a lot. It's a boot camp. MKP is a boot camp. Well, from all the Marines that I know in the Mankind Project, they would look at you and say, yeah, bullshit. Like, you want boot camp, go to boot camp. Like, this is not boot camp. It is an intensive experience.
And what's that term for that type of, it's a type of therapy. There's a term I can't put my finger on right now.
Like a gestalt?
No, it's a type of acting out therapy. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Sure. So we do psychodrama, bioenergetic work,
that was
gestalt work. There are aspects of that in a very specific context of weekend. But how we generally talk about the New Warrior Training Adventure is it's a modern initiation experience. It's a modern hero's journey experience that we create for men. And it has all the hallmarks of that.
And so many men today, even if they do have fathers in their lives, their fathers are absent. They're either emotionally absent or just physically absent. And so it's like there's men I've seen go through these programs at 30 and 40, and it's the first like rites of passage-esque type of experience. And it completely transforms them and gives them a new type of confidence that they've never had before. And it's because they just have had that lack of community. In my observation, would you say it's a similar experience for you?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that. And I grew up with like an abundance of father figures in my life. My dad's still alive. My dad's still in my life. I had a stepdad through, my early adolescence. I had another stepdad through my late adolescence and into my, early adulthood. I was surrounded by boys. I had 5 brothers, right, that I grew up with. I had some mentors. I had, some old wisdom holders that I ran into, school people, and that kind of stuff. And yet, by the time I was 12, 13 years old, like my ways of it, my internal beliefs about myself, the voices that I had inside my head, my beliefs about what a man was supposed to be, how a man was supposed to interact with other men, how boys and men, all of these things. I had never really deeply investigated any of that stuff. So for me, suddenly being in an environment with a whole bunch of men whose one intent and focus was to really go deep and look inside, and figure out like, okay, what is that internal voice that I've got?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Yeah.
a lot of the times we're talking about saying, you know, I'm a fraud, I'm a failure, I'm not worthy, I'm alone.
Yeah.
You know, nobody understands me. All of these kind of messages that we take on.
Yep.
I
Exactly.
see you resonating.
Yeah, of course.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And how can I unhook myself from that so that I can set up my own belief structure so that I can embody my own values in the world?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's calling men to taking a different level of ownership of their lives and stop running from certain pains or lies in their life that are disabling them in a lot of ways.
Which is a really weird thing, you know, and the other label that gets applied sometimes is, you know, the new age woo-woo, new age bullshit kind of stuff gets applied. And yet the work is fundamentally about what you just said. It's about me owning 100% responsibility for my feelings, my actions, my choices, my behaviors, and the impacts that I have on others.
Yeah.
What's woo-woo about that?
Why are you arguing with that, huh?
Yeah. Why? Like, hey, man, I want you to feel powerful. I want you to feel grounded. I want you to feel whole. I want you to feel competent. I want you to feel alive, fully alive. I want you to have access to all of the natural human emotions that you were born onto the planet with. You want some of that? Like, come on.
Yeah. You ready to stop playing victim and start taking ownership for your life?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. I really, and that's something I've really appreciated about these circles, for sure. I'm curious for yourself and your own journey, since you've been with them since 2004, 14 years. What are some of what's one or maybe two personal transformations you've experienced, if you're willing to share? Just personal, hurdles that you've overcome through the tools that you've learned.
So really early on, one of my motivating factors for getting involved in MKP, I spent most of my 20s in a relationship that was emotionally just really toxic, emotionally dysfunctional, certainly for her, certainly for me. And yet I stayed, and yet I kept making the same choices over and over. And yet I kept perpetuating a really unhealthy dynamic. I created a lot of an unhealthy dynamic through secrecy and disconnection, and, you know, a lot of things that I had learned from some of my male role models as a child. And I ended that relationship, you know, with therapy and some time. I finally ended that relationship, and, you know, months later, getting on a year later, I was dating a woman who is now my wife of 13 years. And all of us, and was already seeing the same patterns of behavior in me that I had been using to hide, repress, and deny being in every past relationship that I had been in.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to fuck it up again. And if that, you know, I wanted to be authentic to myself. I wanted to be responsible for who I was, and I wanted to be fully there and present in my relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things that I had not ever been in relationship. And going through the process of the New Warrior Training Adventure, and subsequent work that I started doing in men's work after that, I confronted my own shame and was able to, you know, forgive myself, was able to take responsibility for the ways that I had created the reality that I had created for myself for decades.
Yeah.
And got in a position where I was able to be present and fully committed to the woman who is now my wife.
Yeah.
To own my part in that. That has been unbelievable. That has been was an incredible transformation for me. And it's an ongoing thing now that I can come back to and say, okay, who am I?
Yeah.
What am I responsible for? And I am going to be present in my relationship.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a huge transformative factor for me. And the other thing that's been huge for me is I grew up with a lot of messages that I think most of us take on. If you're living in the United States, if you're a white heterosexual male, if you grew up like I grew up, you take on a whole lot of messages from the culture, unconsciously or consciously, and I had never fit with the way that boys and men are supposed to be. I had never been the model of that. And, through my adolescence, like I was one of those kids. I just didn't fit. So this message that I had was, I'm not right. I don't fit. Was deeply embedded in me. Yeah. And you talked about psychodrama and bioenergetic work, the way through that, somebody whose work I love, Bessel van der Kolk has a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Unbelievable book about how trauma gets embedded in the body and about moving through that. Right. As a man, I think that I had to move through that physically to break out of that set of beliefs that so that now I may not look like, whatever your standard of manhood is, but fuck if I don't fit my standard of manhood. I've used the F-bomb a lot more than I normally do in interviews.
It's because of me.
Is that good? Okay. It's your fault.
Yeah.
So it's unconscious NLP. Yeah. So that, I get to be the man that I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can level that, you're your biggest obstacle. So if you can come over to that, I mean, dude, come on.
And we all are, right? Yeah, that's a major hurdle to get through, and that's something that it's been just mind blowing to watch in the years that I've been involved in MKP, and I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of men go through the process of the New Warrior Training Adventure, go through that weekend process, and sitting in men's group, and from the most hardcore extremes of hyper masculinity, just, stacked, ripped, tattooed hyper masculinity. To, sensitive new age guy. And I was way more on that side. I was way more on the sensitive new age guy spectrum. Watching Ben break out of that relief so that the hard guy gains the ability to take off the shell, to set down the armor, to feel his grief, or to feel his joy, or to feel his softness and sensitivity, or his nurturing inner core, or whatever that is, to feel his heart. And for the sensitive new age guys like me, like I was, to be able to learn to draw boundaries, to be able to not bullshit myself and bullshit other people, to be less passive aggressive. To own, own my choices. And that's like, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that a cool thing?
Yeah. And what I find so beautiful about that type of work is it doesn't just have a personal life residual effect. Like for me, it had a professional life residual effect too. So it's like, I'm at work and I'm really fucking pissed, right? Because something's not going right. And I have the ability to navigate that because I have tools now. And I mean, my background is very alpha like land. Like I was an electrician, like I'm dealing with carpenters, plumbers, general contractors and all that. And so being able to, in those moments, navigate my own emotions and be present and be a good contractor. I mean, it had and has a residual effect in my life continuously because it helps me articulate who I am and how I'm feeling in those moments. And so just even from a professional standard, I think men should even look into this. But
yeah.
What I'm curious though is, I know there's men who will always be on the edge, right? And so for men who feel timid or feel a little unsure about the Mankind Project, they've always been curious, what are some things that they could do that are just outside of the Mankind Project but could help them on their journey?
Yeah, it's a comfort zone thing. The Mankind Project asks men, and our trainings ask men to step outside of their comfort zone. So for any guy if you're hearing the call, like that's, what you were speaking to is like, you're hearing the call. There's something inside of you that is longing to get out, that's hungering to come forward. Start somewhere. And one of my mentors, Craig, always says, it's that 4%. So where you are, go 4% beyond that. So what is that 4% for you? What's one risk you're willing to take today that's going to get you into that edgy flow state of pushing beyond your boundaries?
Yeah. That's good.
Can you, if you're the timid guy, can you risk showing one piece of vulnerability to somebody who it might be really edgy to show vulnerability to? Somebody safe that you can, hey, you know what? Here's what's really going on for me.
Yeah. Yep.
Here's something that's happening.
Yeah, that's good. I think that general sense of, I think timing's a big deal too, because I have seen men go through these programs and not have a long lasting experience because it was just the wrong timing, but they just wanted to go. And so I think there's a certain element of like, you got to be hungry for it, and you got to be willing to be outside of your comfort zone, like you're saying. I'm trying to think of another example, but I'm curious for you, how have you observed the men who have had, let's just say, they haven't had as an impactful experience with your organization? How do you usually respond to those type of scenarios?
With blessing and acknowledgement. I mean, I think that what I see is there are some guys, an initiatory experience. There are kind of two things that you're going to have to do in order to go through an initiatory experience. You're going to have to be willing to be honest about what you're fully capable of. And that's good and bad, right? It's good and bad to recognize what you're fully capable of, because I can recognize how capable of brilliance I am, but I also have to be able to recognize how capable of destruction I am. And that I contain that also, right? That's tough. That's tough to acknowledge and be willing to push that boundary in myself. And the other thing that is a key point of an initiatory process, and, in the indigenous culture, you didn't have a choice about your initiation. Your initiation was coming for you, whether you liked it or not. And there is a factor of submission in that that we don't have today. Wouldn't be healthy today in our culture, wouldn't be possible in our culture. So we're asking you, man, to be willing to submit yourself to a process by choice. Some guys are not able to do that. And those guys might skate through the weekend. They might make it through the weekend, and it won't land. It won't land. It won't ground. It won't anchor in them. And some of those men will they'll go away. And with my blessing, with our blessing. And what did you get? Is there a piece that you got? Yeah, I got this. That's beautiful. Yeah, with our blessing. Yeah, absolutely. And some guys don't get the weekend on the weekend. They get the weekend 6 months later. They get the weekend 2 years later. All of a sudden, something's going on in their lives. Maybe they're in a men's group. Maybe they're not in a men's group. Something's going on in their lives. And then, this is what that was about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it clicks.
And then they can move forward with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. In that, like, it's just about not giving up. It's like TKP, the Mankind Project, isn't the answer for everybody.
No.
Like, it's not going to get you what you want. Like, you have to fucking work for it. Like, it's something I've been thinking a lot about. I don't know if I'm sure you've experienced men reaching out to you and having questions and stuff, but something that frustrates me so much is that men just don't fight for themselves. And it's just like, dude, like, this is your fucking life. Like, yesterday's gone, right? And what did you do with it? Nothing. Like, you were just this pathetic piece of shit sitting on your couch, you know? And it's like fight for your dream. Like, you're okay with spending $7 on a coffee, but not $10,000 on your dream of a business. Like, that's retarded, you know? Like, try, do, go. Like, I've been doing this series on being a man of action, how you just have to do it. Like, it comes from familiarity. Like, if you want to be a confident businessman, you have to be familiar, right? And how do you become familiar? You just get in, you get your hands dirty. And so I've been really running into people wanting to be motivated, desiring motivation, buying books, joining groups, doing all this stuff, but there's not this sense of ownership. And I'm like, I have a strong desire for people to realize that like, organizations like the Mankind Project is a tool, right? It's not a savior. And that's my personal experience. And I sometimes I think this comes from my personal religious background of people wanting to passively sit back and have their life taken care of for them. And I see that often in these organizations as well, where men just want to be taught and not have to just grind for themselves in some senses. And so that would be my, like, one thing that I've observed of other men, and myself included, like, taking my own ownership. So sorry, a lot of energy around that, but it's just like one of my passions. So
yeah, I hear you. And with full presence, Timothy, I'm glad I'm not the voices inside of your head, because if that's the externalized voice, that there's supposed to be a mother inside of your head. Ooh. So yeah, without attacking, like, here's what I really believe. Like, most of us, all of us, it's hard. I can't. All of us are doing the best we can with what we have.
Yeah.
The best we can with what we have, making the best decisions we can from the perspective, from the place that we're sitting, from the level, from the tools that we have, the tools we've been given.
Yeah.
And yes, and absolutely, like, you're going to have to, I had to risk.
Yeah.
In order to get, so I get asked about things like marriage, like, what if she's not the right one? Dude, risk. You're either going to commit or you're not going to commit, and nobody else gets to make that choice for you.
Yeah.
And and that is true of everything that's happening in your world right now. Yeah. Nobody else is going to get to make that choice for you.
Yeah. That's good.
And it really is. If you're not familiar with a book called, do you know The War of Art?
Yeah, I love that book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You put a link to that book in The War of Art. Yeah. The preface and the first chapter to that book are like the rallying cry for that. Like, dealing with resistance, dealing with your resistance to doing your work. Whatever your work is supposed to be in the world. I love that book.
Oh man, I want to go on a rant here right now. But I mean, it's just like, I did this summit this week with someone about imposter syndrome, and how I don't know why people, myself included, think we're so special that we're the only person who has this issue or problem of overcoming ourselves and our fears. And it's like, everybody has this issue. And anybody you see on a stage has either overcome that or had to wrestle with it or is wrestling with it. It's like I don't know, like the devil didn't choose you to ruin your life. Like you're a human. You have the same struggles as everyone else. Like just fight. Yeah, I don't know. So I really like that though.
Yeah, I like that as well.
I'm gonna bring this to close here with one last question that I ask everyone, and then we'll do some closing links or plugs or whatever. But the whole foundation of my project, The Man Effect, has been founded on this one question, which is: if you were to describe what it means to be a man in one word, what would it be and why?
This is beautiful, and when you and I connected 4 weeks ago, it was the first word that came to me, and it's like the foundation of everything for me. And that word is presence. And I think for me, the closer I get to fully present, here's my why. The closer I get to fully present, the more able I am to manifest what I'm here to do.
Yeah, come on.
I know it. I know it when I'm present. And I know it when I'm present in my marriage. I know it when I'm present as a dad. I know it when I'm present doing my work, when I'm here at my desk. And that is, I know it when I'm present, like, holy shit, man, if you've never been in a men's circle and experienced what it's like to do the work or to be in the work with somebody, those moments when the whole freaking universe is nothing but exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah, come on. It's right in line with Marcus Aurelius, his book on meditations, right? He has this quote.
I love the meditations, yes.
This quote in there, he says, "No one can lose either the past or the future. How could anyone be deprived of that which he does not possess?" And I'm just like, oh, when I heard that, I got wrecked. I was like, because the very thing you're talking about is what I'm as well going for. Is I want to be here right now, because I will never be here right now again.
Yeah.
So, I love that. That's beautiful. How can people either find you or be a part of the Mankind Project or resources, all of that?
Yeah.
What should they do?
Mankind Project, you can either do mankindproject.org or mkp.org is our main global website. Hit us up on, we have a great Facebook page / the Mankind Project, at the Mankind Project on Twitter. Find us anywhere, but go to mkp.org. There's a form right on the front page that you can fill out to get connected to a men's group as close to you as we can. I'm going to announce this for the first time in an interview that I've announced this. We've got a curriculum that we're going to be launching in the next month that is called The Men's Work, which is a foundational introduction to what we do.
Okay.
In men's circles. It would apply to any men's organization out there. I would be 100% guarantee you that this work that we're going to offer, it's going to be very short, 3 weeks, 10 guys per cohort, 2 facilitators, $50.
Okay.
Like, we just want to invite you to get into a circle, check in, check out what's happening, and experience what we have to offer. So that's the way to do it.
And that starts in July of 2018?
July of 2018, we're launching this.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Well, I will definitely add all those links below for everyone watching. And I'm just trying to think, you guys have any Facebook groups either? You're just on Facebook page? Very good.
We have a page. There are multiple groups. Most of our communities in the United States, most of our regions have Facebook, either pages or public groups that are open. All of the regions have their own individual websites. So if you search for Mankind Project Australia, Mankind Project Canada, Mankind Project France, you're going to find one of our regional websites. We're ready. So say at the end of the interviews, if you're hearing the call it's not going to stop. So you might as well answer it.
Yeah, that's good. I love it. I love it. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're still watching, I'm amazed at your attention span. So I really appreciate it. Boysen, thank you so much for being here and letting me just poke at you and ask you questions. And I highly recommend men that you would take the call and just do this, in the sense that be your own guinea pig. Even if you're skeptical, go and just with an open mind at least. So
there you go. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. Tim.